Welcome back to the Oscar Project Podcast, the show where I discuss Oscar-nominated films year by year. I am your host, Jonathan Eaterberg, and today I'm bringing you an interview with Tom Potter, director of the short film Lullaby for the Lost, which was selected as a finalist for the 2024 Student Academy Awards. Before I jump into the interview, please be sure to subscribe to the show in your podcast player so you can get all the newest episodes as soon as they are released. If you like the interview and want to hear more, please consider leaving a rating and review in Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Tom Potter is an editor, writer, and director who specializes in experimental film. He started making films at the age of 6 and grew up cultivating his experimental artistic identity. He earned his BA in film production from Arts University Bournemouth, and he joins me on the podcast to talk about his short film Lullaby for the Lost, which was selected as a finalist in the experimental category of the 2024 Student Academy Awards. Tom, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you so much for having me on. This is great. Great to speak with you today.
Excellent. So this film is a journey through the dreams of a man whose memory of his mother is fading. Where did this idea come from?
This film was definitely born out of a very kind of introspective, personal approach that I like to take for every film I make and creatively involve myself in. And for a long time I wanted to make, I love exploring, cinema is a perfect medium for unraveling our subjective experiences, our memories, how we understand the world and how we interpret it, and how our past and our perceptions of our own existence and our experiences ultimately dissolve into the fabric of how we interpret the present and therefore live for the future. And that, as a general philosophy, was something I'd been thinking about for a long time, and it kind of organically evolved into this film. And alongside reading a lot of philosophers' work and kind of reading into Heidegger and Freud and different and Sartre and different influences, me and my co-writer Aaron kind of explored. What we really wanted to explore was how our memories are so integral to how we live our lives and how we evolve as human beings.
Sure.
And so we kind of got fixated upon this idea of, we spend a third of our lives asleep, and dreams are a big part of that. And our dreams are essentially a canvas for our memories. And in terms of how our memories evolve throughout our lives, and, the last time you've remembered something, but if you think back to a memory, you're remembering the last time you remembered it. So it's a constantly evolving, hyper-subjective, relativist construct that's constantly changing throughout your lives, and it's so abstract and unstable, yet it's constantly informing how you see yourself and you see your life. And so those two things are in tandem. So this idea of an internal reality that's abstract and ephemeral in our mind and in our souls, that you dream about and you think about, that in tandem with our waking life and how we exist day to day. There's kind of this feedback loop of them constantly informing one another, a call and response between the two. And so dreams, memory, and experience is this kind of constantly, this like echo chamber of experience rattling round and being reverberated and evolving into something new that then informs the next thing. So I know I've rambled quite a bit there because it's very hard to pinpoint it down to one thing that kind of birthed this film, but it's definitely, in terms of, it was a very personal start, because I really, me and Aaron, my co-writer, throughout the writing process, we went back to thinking about our childhood and thinking about memories that we feel are quite formative to our lives and have influenced our perception of the world and the people we love and the things we're passionate about. But then questioning how reliable is that? How I don't believe in any sense of objectivity in the world, really. And I think tapping into the kind of subjective human experience was at the heart of what we were trying to do. And yeah, I hope that kind of gives an idea of what you're asking about.
But no, that's great. And you mentioned the kind of the abstract nature of things. It brings me to the beginning and the end of the film. You have some visuals, very abstract visuals, that almost look like they were made from scratches on actual film stock, or even like crumpled up tissue paper in all sorts of different colors. How did you actually go about creating those sequences? And is that more of that kind of abstract thing that you were talking about that you're trying to get with that?
Yeah, so in terms of conceptually for the opening and ending sequence, we kind of coined them as it's kind of the prologue and the epilogue to the whole film. We wanted to kind of bookend. We see this character's life from their deathbed all the way back to their birth, and this prologue and epilogue are like death and pre-birth, and it's this point of non-existence, this state that we come from and we will return to in death. And it's obviously abstract. Whatever faith you have, whatever perspective anyone may have on where that might be, where we go when we die, it's abstract and it's uncertain. But we wanted it to kind of be this kind of cosmic abyss of nothingness, but also a kind of an echo chamber of all the experiences within this person's life rattling around within this nothingness, and all these memories kind of echoed into the void. And so we wanted to reflect that in a very abstract way. And I'm very passionate about experimental approaches to film form. I love the work of people like Stan Brakhage, Phil Solomon, these amazing filmmakers, particularly from the latter half of the 20th century, who used a lot of cameraless techniques. So created these wonderful abstract visuals by different means, but particularly we approached it by we created these sequences with 16. We had hundreds of feet of 16mm film, and me and some of my crew members spent hours and hours hand painting and manipulating these celluloid reels, and the material. We wanted to express through the materiality of what we could paint onto the celluloid, this emotional foundation, this chaos, this abstraction of feeling and of human experience somehow within that. And I know that sounds like a bit of a funny thing to say, but like at the same time, like, because that was such a childlike process, like we were just like hand painting stuff, you can't really think too intellectually about what you're doing. You're just like, okay, let's paint away at this. And you can have creative ideas in what you're putting into it and what you're trying to get out of it, but there's always something that's going to be that intent, that creative intention, that artistic intention will be lost through that format. But I find that so fascinating because it essentially has an inherent abstraction to it, but I think more organically and in more of a raw manner expresses your emotions onto it in that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no,
but
I really
basically,
like that.
we painted loads of celluloid and then scanned it in and then manipulated it in post. And there's also certain frames of exposed film mixed in there. We scratched at celluloid, we doused it in bleach, we did all sorts of things to it to create these kind of fractured, fragmented, scattered frames. And we really wanted to deconstruct the frame because we wanted these sequences to be outside of these very, within the split screen format of the film. It's very focused, intricately composed frames on the most part. But we wanted to lean towards the extremity of abstraction of now there's no longer a film frame, now there's no longer a composition of anything in particular. It's just the abstract elements of light and color and texture capturing what goes beyond, you know, within the sensory realm. Or I'm just trying to say, like, we were trying to capture something outside of just shooting.
Right.
Anything tangible.
And you just mentioned the split screen, and that was one of my other questions. What made you decide to try and set up the film in that way, where you have two different sides of the screen showing different things? Sometimes they kind of blend into one another, and in other times they're completely separate. What was the idea behind that?
So it kind of goes back to what I said in one of my previous answers, was like the whole film is structured around this duality within human experience that we wanted to capture within this film, that duality between internal and external realities, and the way we internalize our experiences and reflect upon them and curate our perception of our lives and our experiences, and then how that directly or indirectly informs our day-to-day lives, which then feeds directly back into memories, which will then interpret and inform how we perceive the world, which is how we take the next step to go forward, to then feed back into memories. And it's this kind of experiential continuity between interiority and exteriority that is constant throughout our lives. And that point in the film of the two kind of becoming one, and a synchronicity between the two, is when the barrier between the tangible material world, the external reality, that line is completely blurred with our internal reality. And that midpoint of the film, although I don't like to speak too much about how our film can be interpreted, I think in many ways it was inherently made to be abstract and to be interpreted by the viewer in their own way. But the midpoint of the film, that point of complete synchronicity between the two, it's that point in life, this memory and this internal reality, or that this character has been longing for to return to, has externalized itself within their own life, and they are living the life and feeling the comfort that they've been longing for with their memory of their mother and what they've lost. And it kind of creates, it's that moment of kind of harmonious equilibrium in a way, but more of a sense of pure connection between the two, because there's certain points in the film where the two split screens, the two worlds, are more disconnected and fractured, and that we're constantly playing throughout the film with the kind of call and response between the two frames and the two worlds. And again, in the prologue and the epilogue, the two frames merge and become one, because outside of our lives, it's returning to a state of non-existence, of that kind of abstract infinity. And so again, it's hard to express in a concise way, because there's a lot of ideas in there, but we were hoping to express it in a very visceral manner, and creating this sensorial experience for the audience, which we hope we've done. But yeah, I hope that answers the question somehow.
No, that's great. And we've talked a lot about the visuals and the way the actual frame is structured, but I also want to touch a little bit about the sound of the film. I noticed two sounds almost continuously throughout the entire film. One sound of, what feels like a heartbeat, and then also the sound of the woman's voice singing, presumably the lullaby of the title. What is the importance of those two sound elements to the overall structure of the film?
It's good you picked up on those motifs. They are kind of in terms of the soundscape, they are the most, the kind of through line that's there. We kind of focus on this across all aspects of the film form, really, in terms of creating these motifs that are recurring across each vignette, each act of the film, each stage of the main character's life, that recur. There's a kind of this repetition but recontextualization within the structure where these ideas and these small details that kind of reverberate throughout the main character's life and are kind of echoing within him and across his memories, but are being internally curated by his own self-perception. And, you know, at the points in his life when he's longing for his mother, or he's forgotten her face, or, you know, we wanted to take something like the Lullaby theme and recontextualize it within those different kind of contexts, I guess. And working with Hayden, who's our incredible composer and sound designer, we specifically had so many conversations and developed these ideas of how within these different vignettes of the overall structure, that when the one very simple, and I mean the Lullaby melody, Hayden actually wrote about 6 months before we even started shooting. It was there from the very beginning. We shot kind of a promotional trailer as part of our crowdfunding campaign that was the very start point of having that melody there. And then it kind of evolved from there, and we had these discussions of how you know, in one act it's interpreted as this kind of classic jazz song, and in another act it's a very kind of scatty, intense, like horror, like soundscape. And yeah, having that as a through line, this kind of calling from the abyss, this calling that we're longing to return to, which goes back to a conceptual idea, and I don't want to ramble on too much, but that idea that's central to the structure of the film and the core concept of the film is the idea that we're kind of all throughout our lives, there's this longing to return to a womb-like state of comfort, and an idea of wishing to be outside of ourselves in that way, or back to a state within which we belong, and feeling that sense of belonging and that sense of purpose and comfort in that is central to those sound design elements. In terms of the heartbeat, often throughout the film is actually that of a fetus's heartbeat, and we play around with the fetus heartbeat and the mother's heartbeat, kind of having this duet between the two and almost singing to one another. And we kind of wanted to, and then, yeah, there's just a lot of kind of echoes and parallels across different parts of the film. And even if you take the heartbeat monitor on the character's deathbed in the opening scene, that is kind of a complete juxtaposition to the end point of the film, where it's his first heartbeat, his if any of that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's good. And you also have, and you were mentioning it a little bit earlier with, you know, talking about the different versions of the music, shift between moments of very calm, things in the film, and then moments of complete anxiety. What does this kind of shift say about the nature of our memories? As you know, you've already said about how we kind of circle back to memories and we're remembering them anew. So what does that juxtaposition between the calmness and the anxiety say about those memories?
It's the point at which, you know, all these elements are memory is very ephemeral and insolid in a way where it's malleable, in a sense that, as I've said before, these different external elements in our lives so incredibly, like, they inform how we perceive a singular memory. And that's essentially what this film is it's taking a singular memory, recontextualizing it across the broad canvas of someone's entire life, and seeing how that singular memory can completely shift from something of beauty and something quite romantic into something that is traumatic and horrifying. And I think it's just that point of, as I said before, that experiential continuity throughout our lives, but at the same time, that sense of the malleability of memory and our experiences, where, for example, in the midpoint of this film, it's at the most tranquil, kind of beautiful ambience possible. It's that point of equilibrium, and then suddenly that rug is pulled out from under us, and you're hurtling into the horror of the trauma that lies just beneath that nostalgia, because I feel like underneath any happy memory, there's something under the surface that, what are you choosing not to remember? What are you ignoring?
Right.
What little detail are you hyperfixating on because you want to eclipse the less ideal memories, the less ideal feelings and that's kind of that whole self-curation of our own memories and our own experiences are very abstract in that way, and as I keep saying, very malleable. And I think we were trying to be very playful in how to structure the film in a way that unravels those layers of nostalgia overlaid above trauma, and being something that's very complex and layered. And yet we just wanted to basically unravel and explore that. And so, yeah.
Excellent. And of course, I haven't yet, but I want to congratulate you on being a Student Academy Award finalist. That being said, are there any festivals, screenings, any places where people can check out the film this fall if they're interested in seeing the film for themselves?
Yeah, so thank you very much, firstly. It was an absolute honor to get this nomination and to be a finalist amongst so many other amazing filmmakers across the world it's an absolute privilege, and I couldn't be more proud of the entire cast and crew. I mean, the crew I worked with on this film were some of the most wonderfully talented and amazing collaborators to work with. So yeah, couldn't be more proud. But in answer to your question, we've been playing in quite a few different festivals. We won Best Experimental Film at Water Sprite Festival, which is a fantastic festival, the biggest student film festival in the world, based in Cambridge in the UK. That was earlier this year. And recently, last week, we were at Greenwich Film Festival in London, and we won Best Student Film there, which was wonderful festival. But yeah, in terms of the near future, there's nothing I can announce or point people towards, but there are a few festivals we're still in the running for. But I guess if people stay tuned to social media or follow the film on Instagram, we normally repost and give updates on it there. So
excellent. Well, I have a couple questions not specifically related to the film, but before I move on to those, is there anything else you wanted to touch on about Lullaby for the Lost?
I think just because I know I've spoken a lot on the kind of the conceptual ideas within the film and a lot of the kind of intellectual element and stuff and even some of the technical, but I think mainly what I want to say is that one of the things about the Student Academy Award nomination that I was so pleased about is that there was an experimental category, which I was surprised about, and I'm very passionate about experimental and alternative approaches to filmmaking. And the number one thing with this film that was just wonderful to be able to do was just approach cinematic storytelling in this very alternative, but not alternative for the sake of being alternative. It was approaching something that was an emotional truth for many of us, and going into it. And so many of our discussions amongst the crew throughout the development of the film and working on it was engaging with our own experiences and how can we interpret that with the film form we have available to us, with the technical element, and not having the boundaries of, we need to work it within the parameters of this genre, or we need to have camera setups in this way or that way. And a lot of the technical elements that are in our film would, as with any film, were questioned along the way. And but the biggest thing of making any film is, can you convince people to have the faith to go on that ride with you?
Right.
And that's as much as it is with people investing in the film as it is to crew, the crew, as it is to the audience sitting down to watch your film. And for me, all I'm really trying to say here, I think, is just being able to create something that I think challenges a lot of filmmaking conventions and tries to express ideas in a sincere but non-traditional manner, I guess. It's just fantastic to be able to work with such a wonderful crew in a way where so many of the ideas in this film wouldn't have been there if my ideas on it weren't challenged, and I think the number one thing I'm trying to say on it is experimental film and alternative film is just so wonderful for how it questions everything. Like nothing's taken at face value. Every element of the creative and technical process is questioned. Everything is like, oh, that's how you'd assume you'd express that, but what is more truthful to how you personally would want to experience that or feel is more truthful to your perception of this thing? And so all I'm really trying to say here is big up experimental film, because I love it, and I'm just all for there being more exposure for filmmakers that are trying to do something a bit different and maximize, the beautiful palette available with film as a medium, and how different ideas and concepts can be expressed through pure film form. I look at this film and I look at how incredible it was to work with the cinematography department and all the, we shot half this film on 16mm, half of it on digital. It's a split screen film in terms of the editing. There's extensive editing techniques, and the sound design and composing from Hayden was incredible, and the production design elements constantly evolving. And it's just those ideas and being able to engage with other artists in that challenging context is just great. And I just want to promote it as much as possible. Experimental film is great.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, this might be the hardest question I ask, but if you had to pick your top 3 films of all time, what would they be?
Wow. Yeah, that's like the worst question ever. No, I'm joking. It is a hard question, and I'm just gonna rattle 3 off the top of the dome, because
Go for it.
Because it's hard to pinpoint 3 altogether. But I'd always say I love the work of Terrence Malick. So The Tree of Life is one of my favorite films for sure. That's a really beautiful. It just encapsulates everything. It's just great. It's just incredible. I won't ramble on about these songs. The other film would be Synecdoche, New York, probably, by Charlie Kaufman. Another very existentialist, beautiful but ironic film. It's great. And third one. I'm gonna say My Winnipeg, by a Canadian filmmaker called Guy Maddin, who is really wonderful experimental filmmaker. He My Winnipeg in particular, it's this kind of pseudo documentary about his memory of his hometown where he grew up and how he perceives it now. And that'll be the number one I'd recommend to anyone listening right now.
Excellent.
So yeah.
Wonderful. Now, if you could invite any 3 movie characters to your next dinner party, who would they be and why?
Okay, so I thought about this long and hard, and I was trying to think about like genuinely be like, on my favorite films, like which characters would actually be good to have a chat with. But I was thinking about it. I was just like, most of the films I watch is just like terrible. They're all terrible people. All these characters, like the most horrific. Like, I don't know. So I'm kind of cheating, because all three of these characters are from the same thing, and it's not actually a film. Well, I guess it is a film.
Okay.
Yeah, sure, it is a film. So in Twin Peaks, which is wonderful, like so good. I don't know if you've seen Twin Peaks, but yeah, bloomin', like the main characters in that, Agent Cooper and David Lynch's character in that, and all of them, they're just great. And I'd have sit down, have some cherry pie and some black coffee with them, and that'd be vibes. And David Lynch, who wouldn't want to have dinner with David Lynch?
Can't argue with that. That's for sure. Now, do you have any books you could recommend that you've read recently? They could be fiction or nonfiction and don't necessarily have to be related to movies.
Yeah, so in terms of film, I mean, most of my reading is film related most of the time, but I'd say I recently read Sculpting in Time, which focuses on the work of Tarkovsky and his filmography. Just arguably the greatest filmmaker of all time. Just incredible insight into his philosophy and working process. So yeah, that was great. And then also most recently, I mean, I'm reading it at the moment. I know it's quite popular. It's called the Creative Act by Rubin.
Okay. Yep.
Which again, he's like a music producer and kind of creative director guy, I guess. That's worked with all sorts of artists over the years, and he's basically written this book that kind of dissects and has a conversation about the artistic process and how to engage with being creative for yourself in whatever context that may be. And for me, that's been a really great book in particular, because I think for us all, whether it's in film or whatever artistic medium, I think being creative and engaging with your artistic side can be very challenging on a personal level, and knowing how to navigate it all. And yeah, that book's in particular has been really great in terms of, there's been a lot of things of reading parts and being like, oh yeah, like that is how I like think about these things, but not consciously, like, right. Yeah, it's been a lot of
second nature.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, those are the recommendations. So
wonderful. We'll put some links to those in the show notes so people can check them out if they haven't read them before. And lastly, before we wrap things up, do you have any other projects that you are working on? And also, where can people follow you on social media? You mentioned the film social media earlier. If you want to share yours and the film socials, we can have people keep an eye out for any of those additional festival notifications.
Thank you. Yeah. So I'm working on a new short film at the moment. Another experimental short that is in kind of the latter stages of the writing process at the moment, and we'll hopefully get going on that properly over the coming months. But I'm very excited, doing a lot of kind of analog animation and experimentation with celluloid processes with that, which is I'm excited to get going with that properly. And I'm also dipping my toes in music videos at the moment. Actually, I'm working behind the scenes on a music video right now, which is very fun and exciting. But yeah, I can't speak too much on those things, but I'm excited to get going. I'm sure if people follow my social media, I'm sure these things will get posted there soon enough. So my best place to follow is the Instagram for Lullaby for the Lost for the film. I think it's at lullabyforthelost.bfs. And then for me, it's at Tom Potter, but with an extra R and an underscore, if that makes sense.
Excellent. We'll put some links to those right in the show notes so people can look there if they want to keep tabs on what you're working on.
Cool. Thank you.
Well, Tom, thank you so much for the time and for sharing your film with me. Really enjoyed getting to see it and hearing a lot of the stories about what went into making it.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking with you, and thank you for your time. It's been great.
Thank you again to my guest today, Tom Potter. His short film, Lullaby for the Lost, was selected as a finalist for the 2024 Student Academy Awards. The Oscar Project podcast is written and produced by me, Jonathan Eacherberg, with editing assistance from Joshua Eacherberg. Please be sure to come back for my next episode where I will be recapping yesterday's Student Academy Awards ceremony. Until then, I hope to see you at the movies.